Hello, heathens! I'm Megan Angus, and this is Spinning the Wheel podcast. In this weekly audio ritual, we explore the 8 seasons of the Witch's Wheel of the Year, and we discover how it is so much more than 8 Sabbats. We weirding witches time travel through holy days, festivals, and celestial events connecting our celebrations and magic to the past, present, and future. Our cackling fills the night as we take our turn gathering the wool, wielding the distaff, and spinning the wheel. Welcome back, freaks. It's nice to see you again. I can see you out there. No, I really can't. But I know that you're there because I look at the algorithm and, and I see if you have been by to say hi. So hi. It's nice to see you again and hear you again and feel your immortal clicks. 'Tis I, your preposterous host, Megan Angus, with yet another episode of Spinning the Wheel podcast. We're gonna just get right into it this week. You know, I'm all over the place, but there's a method to the madness, and I appreciate that you that you humor me every week with this stuff. We've got another spicy week in front of us. We've got another week of stuff to engage. We have another week of stuff to inspire, and to another week of stuff to encourage us, even though some of the stuff may be difficult. So let's get right into it. If this is your first time here, thanks for joining us. We are going to talk about astrology. We're going to talk about folklore. We're going to talk about mythology. We're going to talk about the witches' Sabbat of Imbolc. If you are not familiar with the Witches' Sabbats, go check that stuff out on my website. I've got a ton of information about it on my website, meganangus.com. You can watch the most recent class on Imbolc or Imolga, the quickening of winter, on my website or on my YouTube channel and get caught up with what the fuck we're talking about with all of this witchery. What is all this stuff? We're going to get into it. Yeah, that's it. We're going to literally we're going to jump right directly into it. So where are we right now? We are in Imbolc season. Well, yeah, let me introduce the episode officially. This is Imbolc season, full moon in Leo, lunar week 51 ish. Right? We're kind of in a time outside of time. I went into that last week. I'm not going into it again this week. Go listen to last week's episode if you want to know what it is that I'm inferring with spooky. Okay, whatever. The wheel is spinning. That's all you need to know. Okay, so we're in Imbolc season. So what the hell are we doing with this? We are drifting. We are in the void. In some magical traditions, you might say that we are in the abyss, or at least we have a toe poking into the abyss right now. At Yule, aka winter solstice, we die, right? We go into repose. We go into hibernation. We go into some type of a stillness. And as we drift through Yule season, we hang out in that stillness. The world is covered in ice and snow, if you are here in the Northern Hemisphere with me. And everything sort of seems to just shut down and stop for a minute. And as we move forward through that process into Imbolc season, which we now officially are in Imbolc season, there are little stirrings in the stillness. And those stirrings can take a variety of forms. And again, we talk about a lot of this stuff in detail in the Imbolc class up on my YouTube channel, also up on my website. But TLDR, we are coming back from death. No big deal, right? Just a little death. It's fine. Happens all the time. we're coming back from that stasis. We're coming back from that hibernation. We're coming back from that moment of repose. And we are beginning to do stuff again. And spiritually, of course, right? If you're living here in the Western world, obviously, you're on the grind, homie. Uh, Stop that in whatever way it's possible for you to stop. And I kind of want to reflect on this for a moment. I've talked with a lot of folks who feel like, even though this year felt like it had kind of a late start, right? For a lot of folks, energetically, January kind of felt like we were still in the old year. Once we had our lunar new year, which was our new moon in Aquarius at the end of January, it almost felt like, bam, let's go. And a big part of that, in my opinion, is because we still had multiple planets in retrograde, or that were retrograde, uh, and right up to the new moon. And basically, we had the sun entered Aquarius, we had the new moon in Aquarius a day later, and then literally a day later, the last planet stationed direct, and all the planets are direct now. And so, it kind of within this sort of 72-hour period was just like bam, bam, bam. Okay, go, go. Um, and so if you are feeling like like you're rushed, like you're not ready for this, I want to reflect that a lot of folks around you are feeling the same way. That this very sleepy, slow, gradual introduction to the new year was actually working very nicely for a lot of folks. Again, some folks were like, ugh, why won't the new year start? And other folks were like, thank God the new year hasn't started yet. And now that the new year has sort of energetically started, solar start, lunar start, all kind of piled up on top of each other, a lot of folks are like, it's already going too fast. It's already too much. Like, how are we already in February? What is happening? So I just want to reflect that. There's nothing I can do about that. I mean, I'm a witch. I've got some power, but like altering space and time, I can only do it a little bit in my own home. Right? And it's often involves a few bong rips. So I'm just saying, your mileage may vary. If you are feeling rushed, if you are feeling harried, if you are feeling not ready for whatever it is that's coming, you are in good company. A lot of folks feel like that right now. And here is what I want to say to that. There's stuff outside of our control sometimes, and there's stuff inside of our control sometimes. The things that are outside of our control, this is why we have our self-care mechanisms. This is why we have our networks of friends and loved ones. This is why we have our moments of time out, right? I'm a big fan of saying that here on the podcast. Uh it's always okay to put yourself in time out. Um but but in whatever ways you can take care of yourself in the face of the things that are outside of your control, do that. I highly recommend that. That's what those methodologies are in our lives for. um and then in the places where you do have some control, cut it back, ramp it back. And like dial it back a little bit if that's what you need to do. I feel like, and this is my opinion, but I feel like a lot of the like, oh my god, let everybody now run, go, go vibe that's happening is a lot of folks are coming back from COVID. Is COVID over? No, absolutely not. But it's been 3 years of this, and our government is certainly encouraging us to act like this is all in the past and it's all been said and done. And yet, I read a social media post from a friend that's like, I've been sick 4 times in the last several months. Yes, and so, I think a lot of folks are feeling extremely impatient with the world at large. And their friend is having a show, or there's a birthday party, or there's a whatever event. I want to go. I want to be a part of that. I want to get back to connecting with people and having that energetic exchange, and a yearning for the olden days of 3 years ago when we just enjoyed our lives to a greater degree, right? Like, it's not like everything was wine and roses, obviously. But that thing, and I think these two things are sort of juxtaposed against each other. Like, we want to get back to like touching people and having fun and laughing in a room, with friends, and at the same time, we're out of practice, we're not ready. It's all going a little too fast. So sit with that. Sit with the fact that it's like weird in both directions. Sit with the fact that you've got a foot in both of those worlds. And in whatever ways you can, if you need to put yourself in timeout, do so. And there's always going to be another party. There's always going to be another picnic in the park. There's always going to be another show to go to. You're not going to miss out on all of the fun forever and ever. Um, Even though it may really feel like that right now. And we have some stuff this week that I think is really helpful with this stress, or with this dichotomy, with this paradox. I think we have some astrology this week, some fixed star risings, some ancient holidays that are helping with this stuff. So, um, before we go any further, let me say this. While we are working through Imbolc season in total, then I'm going to talk about the full moon. These are our major themes that we are working with: purification, perseverance, renewal, and dreams. And right here, we've got this basic list of stuff that's like, hey, I know. We are cleaning out the old. We are trying to persevere through whatever is being handed to us, the strangeness that's around us. We are trying to invoke or evoke a type of renewal of our energy, but in ways that make sense for us. And we are drifting in this space of dreams of the past, dreams of the future, dreams of alternate presents. Um, and so on a smaller, on a more granular level, the types of work that we may end up doing as witches, heathens, pagans, and just folks during Imbolc season are things like midwifery, and that is assisting anybody in crossing over in any direction, not just helping babies be born. Birth, initiation, waking up after sleep, especially as we get later into Imbolc season, the return of life and light as we continue to move forward from winter solstice, honoring ancestors and those who passed over during this season, the last stages of death work. These are both also remnants of Yule, but also, well, I'll get to that in just a second. Purification, renewal of home and body, honoring craftspeople and wisdom keepers, rededication to personal beliefs, and learning new skills. These are all of the various works that we are doing during Imbolc season by turns. I want to touch on this also. I think a part of why, and again, this is my opinion, but I think a part of why things may feel rushed for some folks, or things may feel a little harried, or like, I'm not ready for this, is I believe that we still collectively have not grieved properly the profound shift that has happened over the last 3 years. The people that we have lost, the systems we have lost, the cultural elements that we have lost. I don't know how it is in your town, but in my town, 3 years on with COVID, every other week there's another venue closing. Every other week there's another favorite restaurant or coffee shop closing. These places that were cultural exchange places, like venues, where people would go to see shows, go to have a drink with their neighbors after work before they walk home, like all of these fundamental systems of how life has been in terms of just hanging out with people in your neighborhood, doing stuff and having a good time, supporting your friend who plays guitar in the one band, all of that. Like, lots of that stuff has been removed from our life, and nothing has come to replace it. Or if it is coming to replace it, it's crap, right? It's something having to do with a screen, it's something having to do with a delivery app, it's something having to do with some bullshit. And it just does not compare to the types of energetic exchanges that we were having before. That stuff. Um, I think a lot of folks are just are being told to just get on with it. It's like, well, it is not here. The thing I would be getting on with does not exist anymore. Those people had to move, or that venue closed down, or whatever it is. And I think that we have not taken the time that we need to mourn that process, and that process is still happening. So I know that's heavy stuff, but I'm just being real. That's what's up with this podcast, with me and this podcast. And so again, in whatever ways make sense for you, put yourself in time out. Go slow. Approach your life at the pace that makes sense for you, and do not let these external systems tell you how it has to be. But again, I also want to reflect that there are some things that sometimes are outside of our control, and there's only so much we can do about that. Okay. With that super fun start to to this week's podcast, let's talk about where we're kicking off this week. We are kicking off the week with a full moon on Sunday the 5th, full moon at 16 degrees of Leo. And this full moon has some context around it. Stay hydrated. Right? It's not just a moon hanging out in the sky. There's other stuff going on in the sky. We have had Venus recently enter the sign of Pisces, where that planet is exalted. And so all of the Venusian stuff and all of the Piscean stuff may feel really exaggerated for you right now. Venus wants to feel love, wants to live the fantasy, wants to be opulent, wants to enjoy pleasure and music and art and beauty and socializing and all of that stuff that I was just talking about. And Pisces wants to just drift with no boundaries and just have the fantasy be perfect forever and have everything be very heavenly, right? And so that's obviously in big conflict with reality, with the physical reality of the world right now. So again, if you're feeling that juxtaposition of that paradox, that's real. And so coming back to the full moon, this full moon is square the planet Uranus, hanging out in the sign of Taurus, and also in the sky, kind of in the background. And we will talk about this. Am I lying? I might be lying. No, we already did talk about this. Yes, we talked about it last week. We also have the echoes of the Venus square to Mars happening sort of in the background. So here's what I see with the combination of this energy of a full moon squared by Taurus, or Uranus and Taurus, and then also off to the side we've got Venus square Mars. I think that the idea of love and the idea of fantasy may be really profound and super important in a variety of ways for folks right now. We may be having surprisingly profound encounters or really intense partnership dynamics, but that might be with another person, and that might be with alternate versions of ourself. I can absolutely see this playing out both ways, right? Parts of ourselves that feel unacknowledged or unexpressed or undiscovered, with that Uranian influence there. Disparate parts of ourself, the unpredictable or unnameable or previously unknown parts of ourselves, they might be coming forward as like potential lovers as much as actual humans in the world. Or we might be feeling like super fixated on a person in the world or people in the world, or just the idea of being in love or being in relationship or just having everything be beautiful and nice. All of that stuff might be really extra thick this weekend and into this week with this full moon. And so I think that there's a couple of different ways that we can work with this energy. If there's a real person in your life, if there's a real situation that feels like it's developing, this might be a time to say something about that, to bring that out into the air, because suppression this week is not necessarily super healthy. Of course, because Venus is in Pisces, there's also this like really entrenched in the fantasy kind of element about about the work, right? So do you actually have a foot on in reality in any way, right? Are you having a conversation with somebody in your mind, or have you been having a real conversation with a real person and now it's time to like express your feelings? And also know that if you express your feelings, they are not necessarily going to reciprocate, right? That's just the reality of it. Um, and it might be more of a like bringing the tension to a head, right? And like bringing this out into the open, bringing it out of the fantasy into the reality, and what happens then, sort of a vibe. Um, and so if we're dealing with other humans in this work, let me say, I encourage you to be curious. I encourage you to be very flexible. I encourage you to not come with an agenda. Like say what you need to say, but don't tell this person who they are or what the situation is about. Um be prepared for unexpected events. Be prepared for um unexpected unexpected reactions. Um and and just be open, I guess. Be open to whatever it is that this person has to say to you. That's what I'm saying on the personal level. And if there is something that's happening with you and another person. What else I want to say about this is because of the Uranian influence on a global level, we may see some spicy actions with revolutionary stuff, or pushes towards freedom, pushes towards rebellion. Certainly wouldn't be out of place, right? We know that there's a lot of that stuff happening in the world right now. In all of these places, don't abandon your values. In all of these places, stay true to who you are. If you're feeling uncertain about what step to take or what to say next, come back to your fundamentals and think to yourself, who am I as a person? I know what I'm about. I know what I value most in this world. Even if I feel like I want to say this or I want to take that action, I know that I don't want to cause harm. I don't want to cause, whatever, right? Um, and so in those moments of uncertainty, if you're feeling uncertain about how to work with this energy, roll it back to your fundamentals. Roll it back to the baseline of who you know you are as a person and what your values are. Because the emotions could be very, very high. Whatever it is that we're talking about, right? Whether it's revolution in the streets, or you're having a really intense argument or conversation with somebody about what you're feeling, or you're having a really intense conversation with yourself about what you're feeling. Try not to react from an emotional space. Try to respond from your values. That's what I would absolutely recommend here. Um, when we get Pisces involved with stuff, sometimes substance use can be a little tricky, can be a little wild. So, your mileage may vary there. If you are a person that enjoys substance, be careful with that this weekend. I'll just say that. Drink a lot of water. Um, and in whatever ways you can, if stuff really starts to get heavy, give yourself space to deal with your stuff. Um, the energy is going to continue to build over the week, I think, and get a little more intense as we approach another pretty intense astro transit on the 10th with Mercury conjunct Pluto. So, so in whatever way you need to, give yourself space to do this stuff. Now, that's all of the really like heavy way of dealing with this. Mature, right? Heads up, eyes forward, kind of, but a little heavy about it. And so I want to also say the other side of this, which is um, we have a lot of like, we have a lot of like really bad news in the world right now. We have a lot of like heavy information in the world. Um, And that's probably not going to go away anytime soon. And so, in the places where it is healthy and safe for you, I say plunge headlong into the fantasy. Um, and that might sound, uh, I don't know, not immature, but maybe irresponsible. And that's why I'm giving you all of that, like, beefy, serious information and suggestion and guidance at the start of me talking about this full moon, because it is easy to like lose our grip on reality. It is easy to like lose sight of the shore. Okay. But also, I feel like we are getting really serious advice from lots of different angles, right? Everybody's talking about how terrible the world is and how heavy life is. We're not like, that's not a surprise. That's not news to anybody. We all know that, right? So, as much as I'm like, be realistic and be grounded in your work, burp, 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 I also want to say, and I'm going to say this again later in the month, um, as we go through some of our other transits, uh, where it is right for you, where it is safe and correct for you, have some damn fantasy, have some dream time. Like, we have plenty of reality around us. Again, that things are tough and frightening is not news to anybody, right? We all know that. And so, in whatever ways that you can purposefully engage the fantasy, I think this month really, um, is super important. I'm just going to say that. Okay, that's enough of all of that stuff, I think. So let me move on to this. Um, when we are working with a full moon in Leo, the deep work here, well, some of the deep work of this is, um, we are coming to a type of culmination. That's the full moon. And this is, in the most mundane way, a really great moon for thanking the women and the femmes and the non binary folks around you who are in leadership positions, who are craftspeople, who are teachers, who are midwives. And doulas, whether they are helping souls come into the world or helping souls go out, or mentoring people and helping birth things into the world. Um, Give a big shout out, give a great big thanks to all of the people in your world that are holding those spaces while we have our hibernation moments and our shutdown moments and our naps and our fantasy moments. These are the people that are keeping it rolling out there. So say thank you to those people. Say thanks to the people in your life that have mothered you in ways that were healthy and nurturing for you, right? I'm not saying necessarily go say thanks to all the moms in your life, especially the ones that did not turn out for you. But the moms and the folks who mothered, quote unquote, mothered you in this life, this is a great time to say thank you to those folks. When we are working with our full moon in Leo for our lunar body, we can either be awakening and activating and adorning, or resting and restoring and supporting. If you want to wake up the energy or shut down the energy, you go with your instinct. But either way, it is about the back, the heart, the circulation, and the blood. So again, whatever makes sense for you there. Uh, as I say every single week, not a doctor of the human corpus, a doctor of the cauldron. Uh, whatever that means. So don't listen to me, some lady yelling on the internet about your health and your body. Check with your trusted health advisor if you want to integrate any of this information into your life. Also, as always, I recommend working with the metaphor. So, is there something on your heart? Is there something on your back? Is there something making your blood boil? That stuff maybe needs to be addressed to this week. And for our plant body work, we are harvesting, we're doing pest control, disease control, plowing, weeding, and pruning to encourage above ground growth, whether that's your indoor plants or if you're lucky enough to have outdoor space, your outdoor plants. Great week for harvesting our winter crops, checking as the weather continues to change and move through. Pest control, disease control, and depending on where you are, it may already be time to start weeding, pruning, aerating the soil to prepare it for whatever the spring growth cycle is going to be. Um, that's all I'm going to say about the moon. I think that that's more than plenty. Let's move on to everything else that I have planned, shall we? All right. All right, now we are going to jump into the holy days, past and present, for this week. We're not going to talk about all of them as usual, but we're going to talk about a few because this week has two very distinct vibes for the holy days that we are experiencing. And again, it really sits with this dichotomy that we are in of like heavy reality, ultra mega fantasy. Like where are we at with that? And so, kicking us off on Sunday the 5th with this full moon, we have from our Roman friends and ancestors, Lupercalia. And if you are not familiar with Lupercalia, it's freaky. It's freaky. I have a big old piece up on my website, meganangus.com. You can just look up the word Lupercalia and it will bring it up. Um, and a lot of stuff has been put on this holiday, so I really try to kind of parse out the fact from the fiction. But the gist of it is that this is a very randy, frisky, flirty holiday for ancient Romans. And again, sitting very nicely with, as we talked about in last week's podcast, we have and I just mentioned with our full moon information, Venus in Pisces square Mars in Gemini at 11 degrees. That energy can be very feisty, very frisky, very flirtatious, very sexy, very lusty. Um, and it's Venus making the transit to Mars, and so Venus is sort of leading the way, but Venus is in Pisces, and so Venus is absolutely feeling themselves right now. It is like, I am in the fantasy, woo, and Mars is like, cool, awesome. um Lupercalia is a part of a collection of holidays that run throughout the month of February or Februa for ancient Romans. And all of these holidays are centered around purification and putting energy in the right place from old systems and clearing out space for energies that will be showing up in the new systems that are rolling towards us as we approach spring or spring approaches us. And so Lupercalia, very specifically, is a festival that has a lot of symbology with wolves, etc. Go read about it on my site. But the shorthand of it is um, that priests run out into the streets wearing nearly nothing but like goat skins, goat, Capricorn energies there, with these long leather thongs or whips, and they would whip people. And people would come running out of their houses, especially folks who wanted to get pregnant, would come running out of their houses and rip their clothes off and stand naked in the streets, dancing and freaking out while these priests would come by whipping them. And the idea, which God us bless, right? That's just Folsom Street, right? That's just San Francisco on a Tuesday afternoon. But also, and what was the point of that? Well, it's fun. People, come on, like, that. I don't have to get into it, but I know that you are some freaks out there listening to this. So I know you know. But also, the symbology really here is to wake the body up, to wake up the systems, to bring them back from the lands of the dead, to wake up our vitality, to wake up our libidos. And this holiday, the fact that we've got this Venus square Mars, happening basically at the same time, very, very timely, very lovely. Full moon in Leo, in the best of circumstances, this is a great time for strutting around and showing off and doing our thing, right? So we have some really lovely timing there astrologically with this ancient festival. But it was a portion of, it was one holiday within several of this overarching theme of purification, of clearing out the old energy and waking up the new energy. Um, and so, happening basically at the same time, and we will talk about the pieces of this as we move through the week, we have a 9-day festival from our ancient Roman friends and ancestors called Parentalia. And every day of Parentalia is a different moment of honoring and sending on their way the spirits of ancestors. And within this process, the Leres were honored and the Manes were offered, and all of these other iterations of ancestral ghosts, basically, ancestral spirits. Um, Ancestors of our own families, ancestors of the community that we live in, ancestors that were, leaders within our society. Weirdly enough, we have President's Day at this time of year, so I'm sure that's a coincidence. Um, but also like honoring the ghosts and like past versions of the house that you live in, or honoring past versions of the way that the lands around your house would have looked, or the spirits of your neighborhood. And again, think about that in comparison to the stuff that I was talking about at the beginning of this, of how many things we have lost, how many people we've lost, but how many ways of life we've lost, how many like cultural nexus points in our communities that we have lost. And we are in a full on week, as far as the ancient Romans are concerned, where we say thank you and goodbye to all of that stuff, and we honor it, but then we clear that energy out, and we send it back to the lands of the dead. February, Februarialis. uh, uh, Gotta love my pronunciation there. From the perspective of the ancient Romans, was this very drifty time out of time. Um, the timekeeping mechanisms were a little hinky at this point in the calendar year, in some eras of Rome, in some eras of Greece, and they're like hanging out waiting for spring equinox to like really get stuff started again. um and so it's just sort of this drifting moment, and in the drifting we are saying goodbye to the past. Thank you to the past. Please go back to the past. Please go back to the places where you belong. So that's all happening at the same time, right? We're honoring our ancestors and saying thank you and goodbye. We're purifying that energy and sending it to on its way to the places where it's meant to stay. And at the same time, we are waking up the physical body. We're waking up the flesh. We're waking up the earth here and now, all at the same time. Also on Sunday, February 5th, from our Indonesian friends and ancestors, we have Thai Pusam. I talk about this in the class, but this is an incredible festival that happens in modern times. Um, and it is also a purification festival. If you look up images of this, be careful, because there's a lot of flesh mortification. There's a lot of uh, really intense imagery that comes along with this holiday. But this is a festival where folks are again changing out the energy. They are saying thank you to past energies. They are doing purification rituals, and they are getting things set up and ready to go for the next energy push. We also have two Bishvat from our Judaic friends and ancestors, our Jewish friends and ancestors, and the midwinter ceremonies of the Iroquois kick off around now with the full moon. Moving to Monday, February 6th, we have from our Roman friends and ancestors, Quirinalia. And Quirinalia is again an extension of this 9-day festival that's happening, Parentalia. And on this day, Romans would toast spelt, ancient grain. You can find it just about anywhere now, as an offering to the goddess Fornax. Um, and This is a goddess of the hearth, a goddess of the literal oven, Fornax. Um, and interestingly enough, um, in some versions of the histories of this holiday, um, there are myth pieces of a god, not Fornax, but somebody else, maybe Romulus of Romulus and Remus, maybe Quirinus, the deity Quirinus, is chopped up into pieces, and those pieces are buried in the soil. So we see a lot of that stuff happening during Lunasa season and Mabon season, and even into Samhain season, depending on the region and the myth. But we know that that imagery is a part of vegetation deities being pushed back down into the soil to feed the ancestors in the soil and to also feed the upcoming growth cycle that then that deity is resurrected through and brought back to life. So we have that happening on Monday the 6th. On Tuesday the 7th, we have Fornicalia. Not what it sounds like, but sure, right? We have Lupercalia happening in the background, so why not? Let's have it be Fornicalia. But this is the proper offering day to that goddess Fornax that I just mentioned, divine personification of the oven, and it literally was an offering to this goddess uh, to specifically regulate the heat in the oven so that the bread would not burn throughout the year. But it was also an an ask of Fornax as like the universal oven, that the heat would eventually come back and heat the grain correctly so that it will grow correctly in the coming year. But spelt, again, very important to this deity, to be toasted, thrown on the ground, offered to this deity in a variety of ways. Also on Tuesday the 7th, we have from our modern pagan calendar, Wheel of the Year calendars, we have a day dedicated to the goddess Selene. And Selene is a goddess of the moon, a Greek goddess of the moon. And she was sister to Helios, the god of the sun. She is known to ride in a chariot like he does, but her chariot was often pulled by bulls or oxen, which I think is just an interesting thing because the moon is exalted in the sign of Taurus. So, interesting connection there. Um, uh, but this is just a day for honoring the goddess. This will be, 2 days after the full moon, so you could certainly bump this back to the full moon if you wanted to. But multiple days of sort of hanging out with this lunar energy. Um, yeah, I'm like, what else do I really need to say about Selene? She's pretty cool. Her other name, I guess I could say this, her other name was Mene, and the word Mene meant moon, but it also means the lunar month. And yes, menarche and menstruation and all of that stuff is all connected. Mene, like a mnemonic, to remember things, like all of that stuff, all of those words are connected together. Meh, to measure, also the same thing. Moon, month, all the same. We get that stuff from her. So there is something interesting here that we're in this sort of like timeless place of, how do we measure time? I'm not sure. And we're paying very close attention to Selene. Also, February having 28 days, lunar cycle, cool stuff. Okay. Moving on to Wednesday the 8th, we have Peri-Nirvana Day, one of two that will happen this month. The other one is on the 15th. From our Buddhist friends and ancestors, this is the day that Gautama Buddha, um, received enlightenment. So that drawing down of intelligence, and bringing in of information. Um, and then we scooch all the way to Friday the 10th. We have the bean planting ceremonies of the Hopi happening at this time. Um, and then on Saturday the 11th, we have from our Roman friends and ancestors, Feralia. And this is where we really get into celebrating the Manes, which are the spirits of the dead, specifically the souls of deceased individuals, like members of the community that were outstanding in some way. And this more or less marks the end of Parentalia. And specifically, the way that this would be honored or worshipped or represented is that folks would go bring offerings to the tombs of their dead ancestors. Um, an arrangement of wreaths, sprinkling some grain around, or maybe some salt, maybe some bread soaked in wine. Violets were a really big deal for ancient Romans, so they might bring violets. They certainly would clean up and attend to the tombs in a variety of ways, sweep them, redress them, that sort of stuff. Um, and it's interesting because Ovid tells of a time when, at some point, this was neglected, and this prompted the spirits of the dead to rise from their graves in anger, howling and roaming the streets. And so it was like, okay, we really obviously have to like make a big deal about this and tuck the past into the past. Um, so, uh, yeah. Like, is there anything else I want to say about that? No, no, that's all I want to say about that. Just know that this is a whole week of attending to the past, attending to the dead, attending to um, the memories of the past and the spirits of the past. And when I say tuck them into the past, I'm not saying forget about them. I'm saying get yourself right with, in whatever ways you can, that those things are gone, that those people are gone, that those places are gone, and allow yourself the space to grieve that. And also go honor them, go say thank you to them. Go to your old favorite venue and pour a beer out on the ground in front of the shuttered doors. That kind of stuff. um okay, and so the last bit of our Roman stuff that we have for this festival is on Sunday the 12th, and this is a festival called Caristia, also known as Cera Cognatio. And this was a day to celebrate the love of family. Families gather together, and of course, we define what family means, but families get together to have food, um, offer incense to the Leres and other household gods. And Ovid puts this in a really funny way, because he says this is a day of reconciliation when disagreements are to be set aside. Fantastic. But he also observes satirically that this could only be achieved by excluding family members who cause trouble. But I think that there's something really important here. I think that there's something um, really important in that joke, right? Or in that sarcasm. Um, it is profoundly important that we make peace with our people, right? We're going into the high portion of the year, and it's soon enough going to be time to make things happen. We're going to be mixing it up with folks and whatnot out there in the physical world, and we want to be at peace with our people. We want to know that we're good with our people. But there's also something here around putting things into the past that belong in the past, right? And Ovid is like, if folks can't get along, maybe they need to be left out. Like, if we're going to have a peaceful dinner, there's certain people that can't be invited. And what is that conversation for us too? Um, like, what things, what people, what elements deserve to be in the past and not brought into the future? And that's something that we talk about throughout Imbolc season, right? As we are moving through this whole season of putting things to rest from the past and making space for whatever is coming in the future, there are some things that we are going to carry through in our work. I talk about that a lot in the class. And so here, in a joking way, but not really in a joking way, there's this conversation of who deserves to be family, and in that sense, like, who's going to support me going forward? Who do I want to support going forward? Are there some tangled elements between me and family members? And again, we define what family means. Are there some tangled elements that we can untangle and make things good going forward, or put things to rest? Maybe it's our disagreement is the thing that's going to get left in the past. And we're going to find a way to resolve that and move together into the future. And or are there folks that just like do not deserve your time or your energy anymore? And they need to be put into the past. And the way that we are going to have a more peaceful future is by not interacting with those folks anymore. That thing. So when we're talking about all of this, like, attending to the ghosts of our ancestors and stuff, it might be the ghosts of people who are not dead. It might be the ghosts of relationships too. That might also be some of that work that we're doing in terms of, telling the past to go and stay in the past. Okay. Back and forth with my notes. That's all that I think I want to say about our um holy days. Note that I didn't mention the fixed stars. I'm going to mention them with our astrology this week. If you're new here, you're like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, you will in just a moment. Okay. And now a brief word from our sponsor. That's me. If you love this podcast, you can support this work through Patreon. Thank you to all my patrons who help me pay rent every month. You can leave a review on your podcast service, wherever it is that you listen to this. And if you are feeling especially hedonistic, you can give it a rating. 5 stars is actually the most occult rating that you could possibly give. Also, I have mentioned this for the last several weeks, but I swear to God, this is really happening. I will be announcing some workshops and some standalone classes in the new year, both on tarot as well as paganism and witchcraft. These classes will be limited entry. My patrons will have first access to sign up, and then folks following the newsletter, and then I will announce them publicly on social media and my website. I will be rerunning the 6-week Welcome to Tarot workshop. It was super fun. I'm very excited to teach it again. It is a dope workshop, if I do say so myself. And then I will be following up that workshop with 4 standalone single-day workshops. I'm expecting them to be 2 hours apiece, probably maybe closer to 3 hours a piece. And we will be talking about material that certainly is going to build off of what is in the workshop, but you won't have to take the workshop to be able to understand what's going on in the 4 standalone classes. And then I will also be offering some more in-depth stuff than what I already have offered in terms of witchcraft and paganism, but I don't want to say any more now. All right, that's the end of the ad. Leave a rating, goddammit. Thanks. Okie doke, artichoke. Let us now get into the astrology of this lunar week. We don't have a whole lot of astrology, but what we do have might be a little spicy for us. So, as we said previously, we are kicking off this week with our full moon in Leo. It is square Uranus in Taurus. And then, as I said, we've got, sort of the echoes from the day before hanging out in the background, Venus square Mars. So emotions could be a little high over the weekend. Maybe a little drama. Maybe it's just you hanging out with yourself in your own fantasy, like, losing touch with reality a little bit. Again, your mileage may vary. Do as you see fit, but stay safe and healthy and drink a lot of water. I will say, as a side note, with the Piscean energy that is just sort of like in the mix throughout the week, remember to come back to the body whenever you can. Make sure that you're eating. Make sure that you're drinking some water. What might be helpful is early in the week, go to the grocery store and grab a bunch of food that's really easy, that's not aspirational, that's super fast to cook. And if you're feeling a bit disassociative or disconnected or disembodied this week, it's not food that's going to require you to hang out in the kitchen for 2 hours to prepare it. You can just pop it in the oven, pop it in the microwave, whatever, you know, and that, what's right for you. Obviously, I'm not telling you how to eat. I guess I am telling you how, but aside from the fact that I have no idea what's actually healthy for you, that might be a way to get through this week and make sure that you are taking care of yourself, but that you're not, overextending yourself or like asking yourself to deal with stuff that you can't deal with. Okay. So our first astrology for the week really comes Monday the 6th, and we have Mars, Mercury in Capricorn sextile Neptune in Pisces at 23 degrees. So again, here's some of that Piscean energy. Um, how might this be helpful to us? This could be just a moment of like things mellowing out on the mental level. It's a sextile. And so these two planets are like, hey, what's up? They're like, want to hang out with each other, having a nice conversation. Um, we might be able to deal with whatever drama popped up over the weekend, if any did, whether that was just our own internal, flux, or something came up with another person or people. This might be now that we can actually put some words to that and sort of like logically make our way through the fantasy. Um, could be a really great time for making art, really great time for doing some spiritual study. Um, we might be feeling a lot more empathetic. Um, if nothing else, I think it's just a day where like our minds are a little more at ease, and like we're a little more mellower on the logic or the intellectual plane. Um, and our minds are not like grasping for answers or whatever. It's a very nice way to start the week, honestly. But and as we move through the week, the energy does start to kind of intensify a little bit. So then we roll to, also on Monday the 6th, the moon moves into Virgo, um, which we're not going to address directly, but just know that it's there. So then Tuesday the 7th, we have Venus in Pisces, sextile Uranus in Taurus at 15 degrees. So here's more of that Pisces energy, more of that Uranian energy, more of the Venus energy. This may really bring some of the fantasy back from the weekend, right? I know when I keep mentioning that word, but it really like is in the mix of what's going on right now. And it is up to you, because I'm not there with you. It is up to you to decide, when is it right for you to kind of drift in the fantasy and like enjoy some fairy tales for yourself, and when is it right for you to kind of come back to the physical plane and like deal with the mundane world, and deal with your physical body, deal with like the reality of stuff right now, because we got to do both, right? We do need to engage both of those places. But again, this is a sextile. So both of these planets are kind of like having a nice time hanging out with each other. They're on the same page with each other. And um and so a way that we can utilize this is shopping. um but socializing in whatever ways are safe for us makes a lot of sense on this day. Venus sextile Uranus is like, let me go meet some new people, let me engage some new ideas, let me have some fun conversations with folks. But also literally a good day for shopping. If you're in the market for something, this is a good day for that. Generally speaking, this is actually pretty positive vibes. This is actually pretty uplifting, pretty light, pretty fun. And also Venus is traveling kind of fast. So this is like a day transit. So if the Uranus element is like bringing in too much unexpected or upsetting stuff, it's only going to be there for a second, and then boom, we're off to the next thing. Also on this day, Mercury finally leaves its shadow phase. So the previous retrograde cycle is 100% over as far as Mercury is concerned as of Tuesday the 7th. Wednesday the 8th, we have no astrology of note for this day. And so I shall move on to Thursday the 9th, wherein we have our disseminating moon in Libra. And this is exact at 12:07 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the day for everybody else around the planet, and it is at 5 degrees of Libra. And with our disseminating moon in Libra, this is actually a really it's a great time for two different adventures. One, making peace. Boom. How does that sit with all of this other work that we are doing this week with our holy days and everything else? Like, hello, what is going on? That is just like rad. Fucking very cool timing. Um, it is a great time to get people to listen to each other. It's a great time to bring people together, um, to educate folks about each other. Um, it's a great time to listen to speakers, and listen to folks who are saying important things on subjects that are important to you. So if you've had a TED talk that you've been waiting to listen to, this is going to be a really great day for like absorbing whatever it is that that message is. Um, it's a really good time for any kind of group effort where there needs to be like a concerted effort to get along and to reach compromises. So, fantastic for that stuff. The other thing that's really fantastic for this time period is throwing a party or attending a party. Again, do it safe, strap your mask on, hang out, do the thing. But um but it's a really fantastic time for this kind of energy. Mixing with people, making peace, coming to compromises, being able to see things from the other person's perspective and reaching sort of this like, harmonious compromise kind of vibe amongst you and other persons or groups of people, and being able to do it in like a party type of environment. Very, very nice. Um, when we are working with our disseminating moon in Libra, we are resting, relaxing, nourishing, supporting, or otherwise restoring the hips and the kidneys. And as the moon is moving through Virgo, just to back it up 2 seconds, um, we are doing all of that stuff for the large and small intestines, the spleen, the pancreas, the parts of the body that break stuff down and produce hormones. In Libra, it's even more filtration, but it's like, what good of this needs to be kept? And again, like that really sits nicely with the work that we're doing throughout this week, right? Like, hey, yeah, there's some things that need to be taken out of the system, but what here is harmonious? What here is working? What can we make work with some effort? And of those things, what needs to be retained? What do we want to be carrying forward as we progress through this week and this month and Imbolc season in general, heading towards spring? That stuff. Okay. For our plant body work, it's the aesthetics only. Just like when the moon is in Virgo, don't mess with your plants. Don't prune, don't trim, don't, maybe fertilize, but don't mess with them. Wipe down your plant leaves, zhuzh the decorations. That's it. That's all that needs to be done. Spin them. That's it. That's it. Otherwise, leave them alone. Okay. Moving on to, actually, same day, Thursday the 9th. We have the heliacal rising of the fixed star Castra. This fixed star is found in the sign of Capricorn. And Castra represents a fortress or a protective building of some type. Any town in England, or really anywhere, that has Castor or Chester in the name, it relates ultimately back to this idea of a fortress, or a protected type of place. Um, Work with that imagery however you like within this stuff. Okay. Now coming to Friday, February 10th, we have Mercury in Capricorn conjunct Pluto at 28 degrees. Let me take a sip of my water. Because this could be very spicy. This could be a tough day. This could be an intense day that's not necessarily bad, but it is, maybe it's hard. Um, it just may be a day that just feels like it's a lot. That's like really requiring you to be very, very present with what's going on. Um, and so let me talk about the hard parts first, and then we'll talk about the like productive parts of this. So, what are we doing with Mercury? Mercury is our planet that is our logos, right? It's our intellect, It's our thinking. It's our communication. It's how we take in information. It's how we dispense that information. It's what we do with information, how we integrate it on like the most basic levels. That's the stuff that Mercury is referencing and addressing in our process. And so Pluto, on the other hand, is the planet of death and rebirth. No big deal, right? Everything's fine. Everybody calm down. Just death and resurrection, right? Pluto wants to investigate. It wants to plumb the depths of things. It wants to get to the very heart of the very bottom of the thing. And it ultimately wants to, destroy a lot of stuff and then bring it back in a healed form that is on the other side of Pluto's, super scary stuff that it does. It ultimately wants to heal. It wants to bring back to life and resurrect stuff. So, what are we doing with this? Well, these guys are at 28 degrees of Capricorn. Those last few degrees of a sign can be pretty intense. And Pluto's going to be hanging out here all year long. Not just at 28 degrees, between 27 degrees and 0 degrees of Aquarius. No, let me say that better. Pluto will be hanging out between 27 degrees of Capricorn and 0 degrees of Aquarius, and then back again to 27 degrees of Capricorn all year long. Next month, it will stick one toenail into Aquarius for the first time in 250 years. I'm sure it'll be fine. Everybody calm down. Here's what I have in my notes. Mental health stuff. Truth. Like big, heavy, wow, oh my gosh type truths coming to the surface. Revelations. Power struggles. Potentially difficult or hard news. And so what I want to say is the same. I'm repeating several astrologers here, chief among them probably Jessica Lanyadoo. Whatever your mental health care routines are, have that stuff in place. Just like I mentioned at the beginning of the week, like it might behoove you to make an extra trip to the grocery store if you can, and grab some foods that are really easy to cook, that don't take a lot of effort, that is just like boom, I'm just gonna eat, I don't have to think about it, bam bam. Like that might be part of your mental health routine. If it's making sure that you've got your favorite bubble bath on lock, if it's making sure that you've got your therapist's number on speed dial, if you can reduce what's happening in your schedule and maybe say to a friend, hey, let me catch you next week, don't know that I have the mental and the emotional space for this week. You don't even have to explain yourself. Just in whatever ways you can make room for yourself to deal with your stuff, in whatever ways you can have the things in place to deal with whatever might come up for you, the better. Pay attention to your thinking. Pluto can get really obsessive and really compulsive about its methodology and how it approaches stuff. You may find yourself just going around in circles with the same thought over and over and over again. Do whatever you have to do to jog yourself out of that. Another great piece of advice from Jessica Lanyadoo is that, she, and I've said this before on the podcast, she encourages, if you find yourself in a doom loop, if you find yourself in a loop of thinking that's real spooky, that's real funky, that's like not cool, doesn't feel healthy, switch over to something neutral. Don't try to switch over to something like uber positive, and it can get just as obsessive, but just in the opposite direction. Try to switch to something super neutral. So if you're like, I'm a terrible person, literally switch to I'm a person. I'm a person. And sometimes just that is enough for the brain to be like, all right, I'm done with that thought. Let's move on to something else. Or I want to color in a coloring book, or let's watch some TV, or whatever. Let's go for a walk. Sometimes it can be just that simple to kind of jog yourself out of the loop. Okay. So, other things that I want to say about this transit: watch your words, whether they are spoken words, whether they're written words. This is not a super great day for signing a contract. If you have to, I would read the fine print like 15 times. Um, uh, you know, communication on this day could be very intense, and intense can mean all kinds of things, right? Doesn't necessarily mean it's spooky, funky, bad. It could be super exciting, great, wonderful, wow. We also don't want to get ultra carried away with that either and miss something important. So watch your words, watch what you say, listen as carefully as you can when someone is speaking. It's okay to ask someone to repeat themselves. If you're texting, maybe don't, maybe decide to call the person instead. I know, an actual phone call. I know. I'm just saying, you know how easy it is for things to be misinterpreted through text. This might be a fine time to not have that happen. Or if things do feel like they're starting to go off the rails, pull the car over and be like, whoa, 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 wait a minute. I think you're misinterpreting what I'm saying. Let me be very clear what I'm saying. Um, could be a day where there's some weird power struggles. Maybe you're the one that has power and you're having a hard time communicating that. Maybe somebody else is in a position of power and what they're saying is coming across in a weird way. Um, all of that kind of stuff. If you can have helpers in place to help deal with the stress of that stuff, by all means do so. If you can clear your calendar a little bit and have less to deal with, by all means do so. And just get, like I said multiple times, give yourself whatever tools you need. Take advantage of earlier in the week, things being a little more chill and mellow, and get your stuff squared away and ready to go, just in case things go awry. Also, sometimes it's us just witnessing our friends and lovers and family members have these meltdowns, right? Sometimes everything actually feels totally okay for us with the astrology, and it's that we need to be there for a friend. That might be appropriate too, right? And still, same thing though. Make sure that you've got your stuff in place to take care of yourself after you take care of other people, if that's how it plays out for you. Okay. Moving on to Saturday, the 11th. We have a couple of things going on. One, Mercury leaves Capricorn and enters Aquarius. So this is Brainification 5000. Aquarius is concerned with the masses, concerned with the collective, concerned with progressive ideas, progressive thinking, revolutionary ideas and thinking, rebellious ideas and thinking. Aquarius is very concerned with breaking down the old and introducing space for whatever the new thing is. And Mercury is like, yep, that's what I want to talk about. It's what I want to think about. I want to acquire as much information around that stuff as possible. So you may note that your and everybody else's thinking sort of has a bit of a shift coming this next weekend, as we all sort of turn towards the future in that sense with our thinking. Also on this day, we have Mars in Gemini, sextile Chiron in Aries at 13 degrees. And this may manifest as um, issues around our presence and our capacity to be embodied, our capacity to be present in the here and now, um, and connecting to people and practices that help you connect with your body slash the resistance that you might feel around that stuff. So, we have a week kind of like being in the fantasy, having these thoughts about things, having these feelings about things. And then as we roll towards the weekend, Mars and Chiron are sort of like, cool, well, what are we going to do in the physical world with that stuff? How am I embodying that? What am I doing with my body to prepare myself to do that work? Or am I? And so issues around that stuff may come up for you, resistance around that stuff may come up for you, or it might be a really good day for you to have good conversations with yourself around what are my issues here, what are my resistances here, what do I want to accomplish here. And it's a sextile between these two planets. So we want to engage that work. We want to have that conversation with ourselves. We are more inclined to listen to ourselves, have the conversation with ourselves. Um, and then also on this day, we have the heliacal rising of the fixed star Nashira. This is another star that's found in Capricorn. Of course, again, Capricorn is very much about the body, very much about embodying things. Um, and Nashira, the word Nashira translates to the lucky one or the bearer of good news. And I really like that in and our fixed star for the next day is also very complementary to this. Um, in fact, let me just jump into that right now. Sunday the 12th, we have no astrology of note for this day. So we have the heliacal rising of the fixed stars Deneb al Gedi, which is found in Capricorn, and Sad al Saud, which is found in Aquarius. And um, all three of these stars kind of hang out together in the same portion of the sky, and they are very much about this idea of luckiness, the luckiest of the lucky, the luck of the good news bearer, the bearer of good news. um and and so I feel like, with Mercury stepping into Aquarius basically at the same time, if we can find ways that are healthy and safe for us to sit with the hard changes that have happened over the last few years, we give ourselves space to grieve. We give ourselves some space to feel our feelings around that stuff. Some answers may start to come through, or at the very least, some of our wishes it may feel like some of our wishes are starting to be heard around some of that stuff. Um, I think that once Mercury steps into Aquarius, even though we are in the waning moon cycle, Saturday and Sunday, the 11th and 12th, I think that those might be really good days for doing some introspective work, um, some journaling work, that feels spiritual at the same time, whatever that means to you. Um, and just allowing some of those pieces of ourselves to step forward and to talk that maybe are otherwise a little quiet or have a harder time putting things into words. And sort of bringing in and evoking that luck idea. Like, what does the word luck even mean to you? Um, and if you were to receive some good news, what would that be? What would that sound like? What would a piece of good news feel like right now? That thing, that stuff. That's the stuff that we're doing this week. So we've now gone through our holy days for the week, our fixed stars, the astrology. We've talked about the moon for this week. So now I'm going to wrap it up with some magic suggestions and a tarot card for you to work with, my dear heathens. All right, so our tarot card that I recommend working with this week is the Six of Swords. And in the Smith Waite deck, the image on the Six of Swords is um, a person is standing up in a boat, and they are guiding or shuttling two other figures also in this boat, from one place to another. In the boat are these six swords standing upright. Not exactly the safest way to sail, but whatever. And there are some little bits of land in the distance, perhaps they're islands. On one side of the boat, the water is relatively choppy, and on the other side of the boat, it is perfectly smooth. And this card is related to the planet Mercury in Aquarius, which is part of why I'm picking this card. Um, and I see a bunch of different things when I'm looking at this. One of the things that I'm thinking about are like the Isles of the Dead, and the Islands of the Dead is a archetypal um, symbol that a lot of different cultures have worked with throughout time. And I see this as a person that is sort of being ferried over to the Isles of the Dead to maybe go sweep some tombs of their ancestors and leave some offerings there. Both of the people in the boat have their back, well, actually all the people in the boat have their backs turned to us. So we can't see their faces. We don't know what they're going through. The body language of at least one person in the boat seems to be reserved or turned inward, is probably the easiest way to describe this. Um, and I think about this card in a bunch of different ways. Mostly what I think of when I see this card is it is appropriate at all times if we are feeling overwhelmed to put ourselves in timeout. Um, Sometimes one of the best things that we can do for ourselves is when our emotions are like a lot, is to do a little meditation and to say to our emotions, hey, I'll be right back with you. We're feeling a lot of things. Let's go to a place where we can have a timeout from the intensity of our emotions for a little while. We're going to come back to that work. But it's okay, in my opinion, to take a break from it too. So, in looking at this card, I'm thinking about a lot of things, but I'm thinking about Mercury stepping into Aquarius and the conjunction, Mercury conjunction with Pluto this week, and how intense that stuff might get, and how like being there for the intensity is important. We need to do that work, but we also need to give ourselves a break from that work at times too. And if that means going to the cemetery and taking a walk and sweeping off some tombstones and, you know, getting away from our thoughts or getting lost in our thoughts, getting away from our emotions, getting lost in our emotions, but in ways that are safe and healthy for us, like however we need to engage that work, but maybe like taking ourselves away from the collective a little bit in some ways on some of these days this week, and go and do our own thing, and just be with ourselves, be with our thoughts, be with our feelings, um, or not be with them, and kind of like let me put myself in a timeout. I've been having some really heavy feelings. I'm going to do a little meditation and kind of clear out and go to a peaceful place in my mind for a while, away from my feelings. Or my thoughts have been very heavy. I am going to go into the fantasy realm and focus on my hopes and focus on my good vibes and focus on something beautiful for a little while and get lost in my emotions a little bit. Um, that thing. Uh, it's tough times that we're living in. And again, I don't have to tell you that. You know that already. This is not news to anybody that's listening to this. Um, but we can only do so much in a day. We can only feel so many things. We can only think about so many things. We can only have so many conversations before, we start to burn out. And we are all in this for the long haul. So, I think that the Six of Swords here is here as a helper this week to remind us to take time out when it's appropriate for us to take a time out, and to mourn the past, to take care of our dead, um, but also to remove ourselves from things if things are just a little too heavy, and go to a place that is a little more peaceful for us internally. And note that person that's pushing the boat, right? We are at the same time saying thank you to the folks that are guiding us through those experiences, the folks that are holding space for us as we move through those experiences. That too. Okay. Looking at the magic that we can do this week, I think a lot of that is already very self-explanatory. But also, um, I think that this is just a really great week for personal purification. If you haven't already, burn your Yule greens or otherwise disassemble them. If you like to strip your greens and use that stuff for incense, this is the week to do that. It's basically the week that, like, in my opinion, if you still have Yule stuff up, it's time to shake out that energy and move it along. So put the decorations away, spruce stuff up, get the Christmas tree out of the house or the Yule tree out of the house, burn your greens, um, or strip them, move it along, change it up. We are not in Yule season anymore. We are thoroughly in Imbolc season now. It's time to bring in that shift of energy. Very important ritual and spell work to do there. Definitely doing any kind of ancestor work that feels safe and right for you. Very appropriate this week, 100%. And yeah, I think that's good. I think that's good. I mean, if you're encouraged to do any of the other work this week that's listed in the workbook, go for it. Um, but I think that those are the things that really deserve attention this week, and that might sit nicely with the astrology and the holy days that we have this week too. All right. So going back over the week very quickly, we have on February 5th, our full moon at 10:28 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the day for everybody else. Full moon at 16 degrees of Leo. On Monday the 6th, we have Mercury in Capricorn, sextile Neptune in Pisces at 23 degrees, and the moon moving into Virgo. On Tuesday the 7th, we have Venus in Pisces, sextile Uranus in Taurus at 15 degrees. Wednesday the 8th, nothing of note. Thursday the 9th, the moon moves into Libra, and we have our disseminating moon in Libra at 5 degrees. And then Friday the 10th, we have Mercury conjunct Pluto in Capricorn at 28 degrees. Saturday the 11th, we have Mercury moving into Aquarius. We also have Mars in Gemini, sextile Chiron in Aries at 13 degrees, and the moon moving into Scorpio. And Sunday the 12th, nothing of note. So our next lunar phase will be Monday the 13th of February. We'll talk about that stuff then. All right, my friends, that's it. That's your work for the week. Go be good witches, or just be witches. I mean, I'm not going to tell you to be good. It's a lot in this world to just even exist. I think it's okay if we have to cut corners every here and there. But coming back to the stuff that I was saying at the beginning of the podcast, if you're feeling harried, if you're feeling rushed, I get it. Wherever you can, pull the car over to the side of the road. Say no to an invitation. Say no to a project, or not yet, or hit me up next week. Let me pick that back up again in just a moment. You in some parts of your life, as I said, and this is true for all of us, in some parts of our life, we don't have a lot of control over the pace that life moves at. So wherever we do have control over that pace, this is the time to exercise that control and to put ourselves into timeout wherever we need to be sure that we are taking care of ourselves wherever we need to. And as I said, you might utilize that transit early on in the week to get some extra chores done, to get an extra grocery shop done, or whatever it is, and make sure that you've got your self-care tools in place, ready to go, just in case stuff gets a little weird as the week goes along. All right, my friends. Love you so much. Blessed be.